And good afternoon, everybody. Now, as you can see, I'm a person of the cloth, so I would prefer a sort of more church-like welcome. So, good afternoon, parish. That's just lovely. We'll be putting the collection plate round later. Hello. Now, I'm Susan Morrison. I am minister of this parish of the Stand and the Square. It's lovely to see so many of you from across the parish returning not for a sermon, but for an adventure through Scottish society of the 1840s. Or is it 2015? Are we seeing a miracle? Well, hello, hi. My name's Susan Morrison, actually, and I'm not a minister. However, there are two policemen outside, and I'm not sure if they're here to arrest me. Is it illegal to impersonate a clergy person?
No, I promise.
Are you sure?
Promise.
I could get banged up any minute.
No comment.
Okay, moving on. So, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Cabaret of Dangerous Ideas. Please give yourself a huge round of applause for joining us here at the Cabaret. Now, the Cabaret of Dangerous Ideas is a wonderful initiative by the Beltane organisation, that's the Public Engagement Office for the universities in Edinburgh, where they coax academics out from their libraries and their laboratories to come in to meet the public. You are the public. Hello, public. Excellent. And the public gets to engage with the academics. These are academics that I have sourced fresh for you. Now, every single... Oh, by the way, can we have a huge round of applause to the lovely people from Beltane who make all this possible? Thank you. Big round of applause for the lovely people at the back there. Another thing that I should point out is I am impersonating a minister, so if anyone wants to get married, let me know. Anybody feeling a bit off colour, I'll bury you as well. No problem. I should also point out that we are being filmed today, so if anyone is sitting next to someone they shouldn't be, any adulterous couples in the audience, can I ask you, now would be a good time to move. Now, the Cabaret of Dangerous Ideas isn't a lecture, it is actually a discussion, and we want you to take part in the discussion. So we'd love you to ask questions, to make points, to just chip in your tuppence worth, whatever you fancy. If you do so, can I ask you to raise your hands, and I will come running up to you with this microphone here so everyone can hear what you've got to say. Usually what the audience likes to do is arrange to have the first question down here, the second question away up there, the third question way over there. Somebody then goes to the toilet and I have to run after them with the microphone. But it keeps me fit, so what else can I say? But today's topic is real, it's fascinating. I mean, if you use the word stats, most people, I'm afraid, go, but what you have to remember is that every single stat is a person, is a thing, is an event. So it's not numbers, it's about what makes up those numbers. We have two fantastic presenters for you today who are going to make all of this come alive and being fantastically engaging. So, ladies and gentlemen, please, kind of a huge round of applause for our two presenters this afternoon, Helen and Nicola. Thank you.
Hello. So I'm going to just introduce myself very quickly. I'm Nicola Osborne. I work at Edina. We're based at the University of Edinburgh. And I manage some multimedia and digital education services and projects and things. But I get to play with all of the other stuff that we do. And this is why I've become a little bit addicted to the Statistical Accounts of Scotland. Helen?
And I'm Helen Ayton. I've recently retired from Edina, but I'm part of the editorial board, which means I help guide the development of the Statistical Accounts Service.
Okay, so I think before we get started, we've started to mention the Statistical Accounts of Scotland, which I can barely say, so I won't say it too many times. I thought I'd give you a quick sort of insight into what they are, because I reckon not everyone here saw our show last year where we explained them. Helen?
Okay, well, in 1791, Sir John Sinclair of Ulbister, who was the MP for Thurso, decided that he would like to record the agricultural and social statistics for Scotland. He decided he'd been inspired by the German gathering of statistics, but he had his own ideas about what statistics might mean. And I'm going to quote from the first account. An inquiry into the state of a country for the purposes of ascertaining the quantum of happiness enjoyed by its inhabitants and the future means of improvement. And this is him speaking now. But as I thought that a new word, that's statistics, might attract more public attention, I resolved on adopting it. And I hope that it's now completely naturalised and incorporated within our language. So that's the first use of statistics.
So he used statistics because he thought statistics was a sexy word. Okay, so quick poll of hands. Who here thinks statistics are sexy? Yay! Okay. Any special reasons you'd like to offer as to why you think they're sexy? Anyone going to be brave enough to
Anyone be
explain
brave
their
enough to
love
say,
of
why do you
statistics?
think statistics are sexy? Who thinks it? Right, your hand shot right up, right?
They got me a job.
Oh, that's a great reason. I love that.
Unless they got you a job. If they could win you the lottery, that would be even better.
We're going to try and convince the statistics are sexy today anyway, but, you know, keep the love for statistics going in the audience there. So, sexiness aside, he didn't have a census form. He didn't have a BuzzFeed poll. He didn't have any kind of other way of gathering the data that I can think of that we'd use today. What on earth did he use? How's he going to do this comparative analysis of the physical, economic and social life of Scotland?
Well, Sir John wrote to every single minister in the 938 parishes in Scotland. And although nowadays he would probably have a panel of researchers that would help him get to the real crux of what he needed to ask, Sir John didn't do that. He just asked whatever he wanted. So in fact, he sent them a survey questionnaire of 160 questions. And then an addendum of another 6 more.
166 questions. That's 3 times more than the census. That's twice as much as the self-assessment tax forms. I think it's actually 3 times more than the personal independence payment form at the moment. It's 166.
Yeah, and don't forget the 5 additional questions he sent about 5 months later. And these covered schools, alehouses, housing, employment and jails. And as it happens, I have a copy of the questions for our Reverend.
Oh, and it's in such a lovely pink ribbon. Right, okay. Do you want me to show out the questions, shall we? Right, okay, I'm going to have to untie. Did you go to the Girl Guides? Because that's a beautiful bow, and that's what I thought. Definitely a badge in there. So, are we ready for So this is the letter that the ministers would have received, right?
A modest list of questions.
So, and there's more of it. Look at that. This is the world's longest letter.
That's 171 questions in total there. The minister expected to complete this for the whole area covered by his parish, for everyone in their parish, so data on everyone in their parish, by hand, by candlelight. How do you feel about that, Reverend Susan?
Well, I mean, bearing in mind I am like a reverend in that, so therefore I only work on Sundays. So I'm going to take one look at this and go, phew, busy.
Yeah.
Well, strangely, not everyone replied promptly to Sir John. And he got quite tetchy after 6 years.
After 6 years?
Yes.
Yeah, after 6 years.
So, Susan.
He seems to have got... he sent out a letter. He
Yeah.
sent out a reminder, like an email notification, but considerably longer than a text. Sir, I received a statistical account the other day, which cost 9 shillings. Have I got the right one, yeah? 9 shillings, in consequence of the minister forgetting that the privilege of Parliament does not extend beyond 1 ounce. So I haven't got enough money for this. I thought it right to mention this circumstance, as you'll probably be in a hurry to send off your account. After the receipt of this letter, for I am persuaded you would not wish to be recorded as being the very last who contributed to so useful an understanding, especially if you was it measuring the quantum of happiness?
Quantum of happiness.
There's a
absolutely.
Bond villain
So-
if I've ever heard it.
Did that level of not very passive aggressiveness actually work?
It helped, but 3 months later, he was writing to these errant ministers, and by then there was about 6 of them left, in red ink, from Whitehall, threatening them. And he also called on some of the wealthy families in the minister's parish to also go round and threaten them. So that worked, and by 1799, which is 8 years later, Sir John had published 21 volumes, roughly, and I know I am that small, roughly my height in books. It wasn't entirely complete, but it was the most thorough account of our country yet collected, and it covered Scotland's people, its agriculture, and its quantum of happiness.
And although that data was very much from the minister's perspective on their community, we'll come back to that in a second, what did make it into the accounts?
Well, there were plenty of facts. Facts like average pay, the price of sheep, the cost of joining a library or being schooled. But more interestingly, and really the accounts, the statistical accounts are really interesting. It also included a description of daily life in each parish, challenges faced by the parishioners, local history, folklore, and that can be quite saucy, some of the folklore that's reported, and the lifestyle and habits of ordinary Scottish people.
I'll ask Helen later in the bar about the saucy folklore. Now, I reckon to get a proper sense of the weirdness and randomness of the questions, we maybe ought to ask the audience a question. So maybe we'll go for question 159, please, Reverend Susan.
Okay, right.
Cut that then.
Question 159. Do the people... this is such a Lib Dem question. I love this. Do the people, on the whole, enjoy, in a reasonable degree, the comforts and advantages of society? Are they contented with their situation and circumstances?
So that's totally easy. Just got a light existential question for you, for the whole community. So that's going to be really easy to gather. Are we feeling contented with our situation at the moment?
Who feels content with their situation? Raise your hand so I can make a note of you. Three.
I'm concerned that we have reviewers in. Okay, and who is not enjoying the comforts and advantages of society? I'm quoting. You're feeling okay?
One there. I mean, this is how revolution starts.
I know.
When people become discontent, you know, they must find these things out.
So maybe we can get some comments from you all to get a sense of what it is that you're enjoying or not enjoying, so that Susan can fill in her return, because she's going to need some data.
I'm going to need some
here.
help. So can I
yeses and no's are not good enough.
No. I've got yeses and no's. But who is content with their situation in society and would be willing to tell us how content they are? Madam, would you mind helping with the statistical analysis by telling me why you're content?
How? Because I like my house, I like my children. Yes. I love my job.
Oh, excellent. That's the yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
How about anyone else who is contented who would like to contribute why they're contented? Liking children, that is unusual. I'll make a note of that. And anyone else who is content? Are you content? Oh, there's someone there.
I don't have any children.
I can immediately see this is going to be very easy to capture for the community as a whole in a couple of sentences. This is going to be very easy.
Right, okay, so those with children, so far only one content. Those without also content, so that's a 50-50 win there. Anyone else who isn't content and has a reason why they are content? Are you quite content? I'm quite content myself. The gin supply is good in the square. Is anyone? Shall we find out if people are not content?
Yes.
Yes. Is anyone not content and would like to tell us why they're feeling aggrieved against society? Are you content? No, you're just decided. No, I've decided. You're not content on a sort of general level. We'll accept general level discontent.
General level discontent.
General level discontent.
Okay,
yes?
grand.
Right.
So I'm going to ask. Yeah, go on.
I was going to say, so Reverend Susan, could you summarise that, please, so we have recorded it in the counts?
Right, okay. I would say that in this parish at this moment, most of us are content. It would appear that the people who do not have children would be slightly more content than the ones who do. There are some people who have general discontent, but they would prefer to remain just generally on the discontent level. So I think, on the whole, we have a happy parish here, people. I didn't count the sheep, though. That could be a factor. So you might want to check that later.
Oh, excellent. So I was kind of hoping Susan would kind of throw her ministerial gaze slightly awry there. But I think actually we didn't get a proper kind of sense anyway of exactly how people were content because they didn't have children. We didn't really check that out
I'm
properly.
a minister. I can make up anything I like.
Well, this is true. You can do the whole
Have
DWP
you seen George
thing.
Osborne?
Yeah,
He says
I know.
anything he wants.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Different minister.
thank you for that, Susan, because... Do you because many of these ministers perhaps did make it up or had their own view. And you could think that perhaps if Susan may have just interpreted our data differently, perhaps she was tinted by her own ministerial spectacles. The small problem of just having one person filling in the account is a particular problem, because these ministers may have particular ideas, social ideas, and they're the ones that are putting together the response for the parishes.
Okay, so quick rewind. It's taken like 8 years to gather the data. It's all been filtered through one minister. We think Susan's relatively reliable. We've seen some of the others. This does not seem like the ideal system for gathering data in. Like, you wouldn't do this again. Like, there's a census running by, 1801, so you wouldn't do this again, right?
Ah, but you would. The new accounts.
Okay. How new are they?
Well, the new accounts were in 1834, so perhaps not quite as new as you might think. Again, they used the ministers of the church, but this time it was suggested in the instructions that they could speak with dignitaries and teachers for help. So these new accounts in 1834 began 35 years after the old accounts were published.
Okay, so
And most importantly, after the Industrial Revolution. So the old accounts, 1799, pre-revolution, and then the new accounts published by 1845. So again, they took a good 9 years, but by this time Sir John Sinclair was dead. Probably not due to that. They also took 9 years, and they are post the revolution, Industrial Revolution. So these two sets of material are fascinating from that point of view.
So that makes them 170 years young, or by my calculations, 2 Sean Connerys. Okay, so that's a long time ago. I just can't imagine there'd be any parallels at all to life in 2015. And there I was promising weird parallels in the Fringe programme. Helen, what are you doing on that slightly suspiciously, I'm going to prod the audience and tell them it's a Back to the Future DeLorean reference kind of time sets there? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing?
No.
Nothing? Okay, I don't like to overwork a theme, but it's a Back to the Future anniversary. I wanted a theme. So we're going to have to do some high-speed, time-travelling, high-tech special effects. I want some wavy arms, sort of timey-wimey arms. So, okay, where we're going, we don't need roads.
Well, actually, in the 1840s, there was a pretty good network of roads, Nicola.
Back to the Future reference, Helen. It's a film. You might want to see it. She hasn't actually seen it. This is truth. So I have to justify his 30th anniversary tie-in. Otherwise, it is just tacky. Let's wave our hands again. We'll go back in time, apparently.
Even further back in time. then.
Further back in time.
Wow.
Okay, yes. So, where are we, Helen? Where have you taken us?
Well, we're in 1840, and we're close to the parish of St Fergus in Aberdeen.
Okay. Now, low-budget special effects aside, because they were very convincing. I realise they were very convincing. I'm just not completely convinced that we're in 1840s yet. Nothing to do with the lights or anything. How can we check? How about we checking at that library over there? Would that be all right?
I think you'll find that that's closed due to staff shortages.
So it is 2015 then. Okay.
No, it's 1840.
I read about those cuts. Okay. So you think it's 1840, do you? Convince me.
Okay, Susan, what's the setup of our library in St Fergus?
There is a library in St Fergus. Woo! The annual income of, I imagine, of the parish, the annual income is upwards of 6 shillings, of which 1 shilling is paid to a librarian who attends on the first Monday of every month. Mobile libraries, how exciting. First Monday of every month to take in and give out books, and who is responsible for the state in which the books are kept. The rest is applied to the purchase of new books. The number of volumes is upwards of 300. That's good, but many of these are expensive works. So this is a well-appointed library I would join.
Ish.
Oh, I think so.
One day a week.
Month.
They
don't even have 50 Shades of Grey, so it must be good.
So we have a small library on quite a restricted budget with staffing 1 day a month. That does sound a bit 2015 to me, I'll be honest. And those books being expensive, that's the one thing that kind of sticks out perhaps. But let's say I go with the idea that we're in the 1840s. Where's the library getting their income from?
Well, they have shareholders and people who do give donations. And when the library was set up in 1829, the managing committee borrowed £10 to set it up. But once it's set up, you have to help pay for it. So the shareholders pay £1 a year, and everyone else pays 1 6p.
Okay, so they're not like our modern libraries because those are usually free. Although everyone's paying a small share ahead of time towards some kind of goal level of funding, and then they get some sort of perk back. That's crowdfunding. That's new. That's 2015 again. Loads of libraries doing that. So the Scottish Poetry Library doing that last year. So, is there central provision though, Helen?
No. Well, there was very little central provision of libraries during this period. So they were established by self-organising groups of individuals, benefactors, local churches or schools, or in the case of Edinburgh, the University Library.
Okay, and you said the annual price of access was 1 shilling in 1845. We did some number crunching. We did the number crunching 4 times because actually it's quite hard to work out what a historical shilling is in today's value. My best estimate is about £6 a year, which is not bad. That's pretty cheap compared to Netflix. What did you get for your money?
Well, that was a Scottish shilling, by the way, as
A
well.
Scottish shilling. Yep.
Well, I think you'll find that a shilling was a very competitive price, because if you were in Kinglassie, Fife, it was 2 and 6pence. But in terms of what you got for your money, Susan, I think you may have some notes on the current stock
I do.
for the St Fergus Library.
The St Fergus Library is proud to say that we stock the books are well selected and consist of historical, biographical, scientific, literary and religious publications, novels, political pamphlets and books of a professedly controversial character are expressly excluded by the regulations. So don't come looking for 50 Shades of Grey, okay?
That sounds fun. The library where nothing is allowed. That sounds really fun.
Libraries are not supposed to be fun in St Fergus, are they, Susan?
Certainly not. We don't want people reading smut at the taxpayer's expense. Good Lord, definitely not. Or seditious things to read like that. Oh, no. And we've got... You should have a good taste for reading. I love this. We're even going to lay down the rules for you. Are you ready? For all of you out there that read smut and seditious pamphlets. The taste for reading, inspired and gratified by this institution, is yearly increasing in the parish. And while the rising generation are pressing around the tree of knowledge, it is a matter of congratulation that they are furnished with its ripe and wholesome fruit, and not tempted to pluck that which is green and poisonous. I've just put the dandy and the beano in that category as well. I think that's seditious. Thank you.
So it was up to the boards that ran these libraries to decide what they were for. And to give you a bit of history about library, when the first Carnegie Library was opened in Dunfermline in 1883, so that's another 40 years after these accounts, there were only 2 public libraries in Scotland. And Edinburgh didn't get a public library until the 1890s. So for most of the people, these little local libraries, as strange as their collection policies may be, that was it. Really, until the late 19th and early 20th century.
So no exciting reading for a while then. So I know that we have about 500 libraries now, from what I could find in Scotland in 2015. And I'm going to propose a dangerous idea, audience. This is your cue to go wild and wave at Susan. I'm going to suggest that with all the pressures on local authority budgets, we kind of embrace the volunteering thing and we just entirely hand over the libraries, local communities, on a crowd-funded, paper access kind of basis. What do you think? You up for that? Okay, why not? Why not?
Who thinks that
Convince
is
me
a
elsewise.
bad idea? And want to chip in about why that's a bad idea. I think actually, if you think about what that quote said earlier on, it means a small committee could get a hold of your library and stock it with just what they want to read.
Having done a lot of research, I have to say you would not believe the amount of committees running in the 1840s, just in general.
So who thinks it's a good idea for libraries to be given over to charitable groups? Who thinks it's a bad idea for libraries to be given over to charitable groups? Give us a show of hands. Who thinks it's a really bad idea? Anybody else worried about what? Oh, we've got an agnostic, and you're not sure. Do you think it'd be all right?
I don't know. I mean, it depends what group is running the library, doesn't it? So I'd have concerns on that account. If you have a really religious group in one town, for example, are they really going to dictate what kind of books you are allowed to read? So, but as a scientist, there's always another side, and Susan knows this very well.
I'm not a scientist. I'm not even really a minister. I know.
So I'm going to suggest that when we keep the libraries kind of covered, they're kind of helping out lots of quite advantaged middle class people quite a lot of the time. Talk me down. Talk me down. Who thinks it's still a bad idea? Or anyone? I won anyone over yet? No. No. Okay.
Right? Because the libraries, just so you're suggesting, it's just nice posh people that know how to behave in
Well,
a
they're
library.
awfully good at arguing their case to keep them open.
I would just close every library.
Oh, that's properly dangerous. I love it.
Yeah,
Why?
because I don't think people use them properly. I don't like them. I've stopped going to our library about 20 years ago.
Okay.
And the only time I would ever use it is to use any sort of historical archives. But basically everything's online, so close them down, save us some money.
Okay, anyone want to argue against that? Yeah,
Yes,
I can see a
you
vigorous hand
you
over
must.
there.
You have been reading. You have been reading seditious pamphlets, madam. I can tell.
I'm outraged of East Where's your question? Yeah, outraged in East Lothian. I use my library twice a week. It is a community for villages around Scotland and East Lothian. East Linton, in my case, they have events in there. They have day centres around the library. We use I'll be buying a book for my kid like 3 times a week, or I can go pick up books, pick up different things. The librarians know him by name. There's groups and singing and dancing, and all the school kids are in that. No, absolutely not. It promotes all of those things.
Keep him for the singing and
reading.
dancing.
The literacy. Nice try, Nicola.
There are libraries where my name is known as well.
I should probably put I'm a reformed librarian. I'm just being difficult, really.
I just want to put it in a voice for Andrew Carnegie, who built our library in my neighborhood.
I'd say the amount of libraries built by the Carnegie Trust is quite terrifyingly huge. It's a lot of the libraries in Scotland were built just by him.
Worldwide, it's
and
about
that trust.
2,000.
And I think as well that we forget that not everyone has internet in their home. And so being able to go to the library and access internet is as important for some people as taking out a book.
Yeah, but I'm getting slightly frightened by the idea of you're just browsing through Dostoevsky and somebody's Morris dancing in your library. I'm just seriously not doing that. And I want to know which library you go to get those words of revolution, madam. I'm telling you. Scared the living daylights out of me. That's how it starts, you know.
Well, I have to say, I mean, obviously there's been a little bit of kind of volunteering reduced opening hours going on in libraries. There was a study in Northern Ireland that reducing the opening hours of libraries didn't change the usage level, which was interesting. People were kind of fitting in, like in the 1840s maybe.
Yeah.
But there is a communities empowerment Scotland bill going through that would hand over rather a lot of the control of libraries and things of that ilk back to the community. So I'm not the only one with the dangerous idea. You may have to prepare your arguments for others, I suspect. Yeah. So I think we've sorted the library question slightly. We're mostly in favour of them, but not quite.
I'll put that in my
I think there
statistical
just
account.
isn't enough singing and dancing in your library. That would perk it right up.
Yeah, if they introduced tambourines, would that help?
And community centre facilities, maybe. So what else is not so new at all in Scotland in 1845? What's going to look very familiar? I'm thinking it's 100 years before the welfare state set up. I think there's going to be some Ian Duncan Smith approved things going on.
Funny you should mention that, Nicola. Perhaps Susan could tell you about one of the finer Edinburgh workhouses.
Yeah, now I am seriously worried reading this out because if Ian Duncan Smith does have this yurt bugged, he's going to write down every single word going, oh, that sounds like a good idea. This is a workhouse in Edinburgh. The workhouse was erected in 1761 and first opened for the reception of paupers on the 27th of May, 1762. The number of inmates the first year was 84 and 97 in the second year. The workhouse was enlarged at different periods. In 1837, it contained at one time 539 inmates. Its size scarcely affording comfortable accommodation for so many, the number of inmates has for several years past been gradually reduced. He didn't say how. Bit worrying. The inmates work at shoemaking, joiner work, weaving, sewing, knitting, hair teasing. Hair teasing?
Hair teasing.
How do you, what do you mean? Hello, hair. But you've got a rubbish condition. Hair teas and other such employments. The workshop is well conducted and the inmates are comfortably maintained, although the average of each costs only about 6 shillings a year.
Actually, I like to think the hair teasing is like an 80s reference in itself. So what makes it a special workhouse then, Helen?
Yeah, and in fact it was £6 Scottish a year.
Oh, sorry, my mistake. £6 Scottish pounds.
Well, it was a special workhouse because where it was, apart from being in the well-off part of the west end of Princess Street, this was St Cuthbert's or the West Church. It's also a church so grand it moved all its lunatics to Morningside.
I'm so sorry, I couldn't resist. But I thought workhouses were more in use in England in the sort of early 19th century. Am I got it wrong?
It was, but
Okay.
they were, but times have changed. In 1845, just as these accounts were completed, there was a brand new poor law for Scotland that came into force, which was intended to alleviate the suffering of the poor. It did this by no longer providing any any sort of automatic poor relief. And alongside that, it made provision to increase the use of workhouses. And to deal with rising levels of unemployment brought about by industrial change, this is 1840, not 2015, it enabled the raising of local taxes for poor relief.
So it's helping the poor by restricting their access to poor relief, roughly speaking. That sounds kind of familiar, I'll be honest. That kind of helpfulness.
No, it's entirely different from 2015. If someone was unable to find paid work, they could seek poor relief by making an application to a panel. If a decision went against them, they could appeal. That was a special perk of being in Scotland, because in England and Wales, they couldn't appeal.
And
when you applied for poor relief, this could be in a few different ways. You could apply on the grounds of being unable to work due to temporary issues, such as illness or disability. If you were elderly, or if you were a widow with young children, or if you had a mental incapacity, which is, of course, not how they described that in those days. And at first, you could receive what's called outdoor relief, meaning money and aid. Or you could go into the workhouse. But in 1868, so really not long after these accounts were published, outdoor relief was stopped.
so why did they do that? That seems like a reasonably sensible thing to do.
Because aid in the form of money and support was much more open to being mismanaged and deemed too open to abuse.
Shades of kid company there, I fear. Okay, so to recap, if you couldn't work, you could apply for help, which is good. And if you did that and you were able-bodied and you were found to be able to work, you might end up in a workhouse. And while you're there, you'd have your basic living costs met, but you'd be doing work that you wouldn't be paid for, but the workhouse would be paid for. Yeah, but you're not getting anything yourself.
Pretty much.
And that's nothing at all like the DWP work experience program at all.
Actually, I think it's closer to Amazon 0 hours.
Oh, I think you're missing the point here, Nicola.
Oh, okay.
Poor people received housing, food, their children received some education, and they were given meaningful, productive work.
Okay.
That
So
hair teasing.
actually...
What, you mean the hair teasing?
Yes.
The hair teasing.
So I have another dangerous idea for the parish to ponder. Let's bring back workhouses.
Seriously?
Seriously. Don't you believe that Dickens stuff? Food, shelter and childcare all in one place.
All right, audience of the parish. We're going to bring back workhouses because we're awesome like that. Who thinks this is a good idea? I'm going to say yes because I'm going to be difficult. Oh, man, you're just not up for playing. Okay, and who thinks this is a really bad idea?
To bring back workhouses.
Okay. Why is it a bad idea? I mean, it's all going to be there, all in one place. They're looked after, you know.
They get hair teasing.
They get a hair teasing experience.
I mean, where can you experience a hair tease? I don't have to. Somebody had their hand up over there.
Because who would run the workhouses? If they're run like private company-owned residential care houses, when they go bust because they're run for profit, then what happens to everyone?
Okay.
But would you get cheap shoes? If, as a nice middle-class library user, would I get cheap shoes?
You might get cheap shoes.
Ooh.
And your hair would get teased. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Think of all of that helpful work getting done that you can profit from if you've got a share in it too.
But presumably, if you had a workhouse as well, not only would the state then, because if you're making stuff and teasing hair and all that shizzle, then they're getting the money back in. So as taxpayers, would benefit, wouldn't we? And the other thing is, if you're in a workhouse, you can't play the system. Whoop.
So this is an argument for they would bring down the cost of the housing benefit bill because landlords would no longer be able to scalp the
This is
taxpayers'
true.
money. So
See, we're winning them over.
We're
winning them over.
swing. We're starting to swing here, people.
Oh, no.
Right, hang on.
if the people in the workhouses are learning to make cheap shoes, are they learning a skill they can then take from the workhouse to a productive job?
It's a good
You
question. It's a good question. I think particularly
good
because
question.
Timpson's really does most of its outsourcing to prisons in much the same way, it's probably not as helpful as it could be. No license plate jobs.
Exactly.
No, it's true. It's true.
Hello, hi. If anybody was going to be in a workhouse, it would be me. But would I still be entitled to a vote?
Oh, I haven't decided. That one's up for debate.
See, now you start to unpick that particular scab.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff starts coming out. So would you get a vote? Did they get a vote?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we don't do that in prisons because they might vote the wrong way, you know.
Oh, we can't have that. No.
Can't
definitely
have that. Can't have
Can't
that.
have poor people voting, for goodness sake.
Yeah. Okay. Any other compelling reasons to reopen them or shut them? Not shut them.
Oh, we got another question over here.
Would it mean we could get rid of Jeremy Kyle off the TV?
Oh no.
How would I get my ironing done if I don't have Jeremy Kyle, quite frankly?
That is the best argument I've heard. You should
crackerjack argument.
No, don't say that to Ian Duncan Smith. That'd be a very bad idea. Okay, I'm thinking the parish is pretty roundly voted against workhouses, slight perks aside, which I think I'm cool with, by the way. Who ran these workhouses? Because someone asked that already. So who ran them at this time?
Well, there were boards of trustees, administrative staff, governors, barbers, gardeners.
It's weird that they didn't do the gardening themselves. Okay, I did a bit of number crunching before the show, so I kind of had a look into this. And I looked at the Edinburgh workhouse that we were talking about before, the one that sends its lunatics to Morningside. Yeah. They note in their accounts the great level of want and the reduced income that they're getting to look after the poor. This is a theme across the 1840s accounts. Again, nothing like 2015. So I looked up how much they paid their staff.
I'm sure it was a reasonable compensation for the responsibility and the seriousness of their roles.
Well, they did put in their whole budget for 1845, which is very helpful of them. That's in the accounts. Some very useful data there. They had about 12 staff, or at least 12 staff listings, and their total salaries added up to £987. So if you remember, it was costing about £6 a year to cover the living costs sort of per resident. So they were getting paid the equivalent of 158 inhabitants that covered the cost of those. Like 158 inhabitants was equivalent in terms of their spend as the 12 members of staff that were managing the organisation. That doesn't seem like a great sort of setup to me.
I'm sure they did a great job of managing the finances.
Well, see. Okay, so I looked up all of the committees that run this workhouse, and it turns out that there were 120 heritors across, I think, 6 sub-boards of a main board. They really like the committees. And they've made a few dubious decisions lately, which I think, Susan, you've got some news of the new burial plots that they've been buying up. Yeah.
Yes, it's the burial plots. And funnily enough, I happen to know the background, by weird coincidence, of this particular stat.
This is why I love having e-compare for us.
I don't know if you know this, but by the 1800s, the burial situation in Edinburgh was chronic. Most of the graveyards were completely overcrowded. Can I go in to just tell this quick story? Because I love it. Right. I love this story. Up in Greyfriars, for example, you'll notice the big wall that goes round that kind of holds the cemetery in, and people were actually only being buried about 9 inches below the surface. And what was happening was, and it's also quite clay ground at that point. This is before they opened the Victorian side. And what would happen is the ground would get would turn into kind of a mush. Right, and in fact, I would say like Angel Delight, if you can imagine that, like a mousse. And as the corpses beneath the ground were decomposing, they were sending gas up through the bubbly soil. And as you stood at Greyfriars, you could watch the soil undulate with the. It's good that, isn't it? It's horrible. And also, if you walked along the wall of Greyfriars, effulgence flew down the wall, which is just basically, I suppose, granny, really. But. However, that was the situation. So
they did need burial grounds.
They did need burial grounds. So this was the decision that they took. In 1833, a question occurred respecting the new burial grounds. Oh, hello, my mic's gone again. I think this one's on. Oh, here we go, it's back in. Modern technology. Hang on, I'll borrow yours for a sec. In 1833, a question occurred respecting the new burying grounds acquired by the Kirk Session, who, to avoid legal proceedings, proposed, on certain occasions, an amicable agreement. The heritors, however, raised an action which terminated in a joint minute of compromise and settlement. Politicians! To which the Court of Session interposed their authority on the 5th of July, 1844, leaving matters in much the same way as they formerly were, after expending about £1,500 in litigation. 1,500 quid to lawyers.
Kind of tram level kind of competency going on with your board there, Helen.
There was also some terrific boards managing organisations in Edinburgh at that time, like the governors of Heriot's Hospital. Isn't that right?
Yes, there
Susan?
were. I'm now going to speak up for the heritors after making that bad decision. They got another one going. Some years ago, an Act of Parliament was obtained empowering the governors to dispose of the surplus revenue of Heriot's Hospital for the erection of day schools in the most populous districts of the city for the gratuitous education of poor children belonging to deceased burgesses, freemen, and other poor citizens of Edinburgh. Accordingly, 7 very commodious handsome buildings have been erected in the following localities: Heriot Bridge, Old Assembly Close, Borthwick Close, Cowgate Port, High School Yards. In Old Assembly Close and High School Yards, 2 infant schools were also established. These are now attended by upwards of 2,000 children. Ooh. Who knew there were that many dead burgesses? 2,000 children, and from the efficient manner in which they are conducted, promise to be of the utmost benefit for the general diffusion of education among the lower orders.
Awesome. I'll confess that that's awesome. That is some excellent management going on there. In fact, there's a map of all the schools they built just over here. You can work out where they all are compared to current day. I'm going to have a nosy. So just putting aside the fact that healthcare costs must have been through the fucking ceiling if they had that much money to build that many schools, putting that aside, that is an awesome thing to do. And that was free for poorer children, which is fantastic. And there were some parish schools that were free for children, but quite a lot of schools actually charged a fee back in the 1840s, didn't they, Helen?
Yes, they did. So many were paid for, but the price varies by location, by who was running the school, what level of study, and even what subject.
By subject, seriously?
Oh, yes. I've been doing some number crunching too. And I'll read from this. Writing and arithmetic might cost 7 shillings a quarter. In Edinburgh, 3 shillings in Hawick, so bargain in the borders, 10 shillings in Banff. French and maths cost more in Edinburgh junior schools, but if you want to do Latin or Greek, which is what you need to go to university, in Hawick, that was £1 a quarter.
So you have to pay extra for kind of classics and sciences in school. Yeah, that definitely still happens, to be honest. That's some quality social engineering going on there. And how did that compare to how much people were getting paid, those kind of school fees? Because that's per child, right?
Mm-hmm.
Per quarter.
Well, at this time, farm labourers were earning about 9 shillings a quarter. Oh, a week, sorry, that would be 9 shillings a week. Mill workers, coal miners, 15 shillings a week.
Okay, so your school for one child doing, let's say, reading, writing, arithmetic, that was like the main focus. That would be 9 shillings a quarter in Hawick, so that's about a 13th of the take-home pay of their parents. Okay, that seems pretty high. The library's looking really cheap right about now. And Latin costing so much more as well.
Well, as I say, Latin gave you an advantage in society. And compulsory education didn't come in until about 1872. And in fact, education used to be a dangerous idea itself. Susan, could you read us that comment from Lanark, from the first statistical account?
I will read the comment from Lanark. Can I just point out, I have a Latin higher. It has never been of any benefit to me whatsoever.
I have a Latin GCSE and I feel the same.
Cool. Right. This is from Cawdor, the county of Lanark, in 1791 to 99, when an attempt was made some time ago to have the condition of the schoolmasters of this country somewhat better. The argument by which some lords and gentlemen opposed it was that they wished parish schools were suppressed altogether because their servants were corrupted by being taught to read and write. That they would be more obedient and dutiful were they more ignorant and had no education. This, however, is not the opinion of any gentleman in this parish. They well know that some of the first and most respectable characters in the nation have been trained up at country schools. Do you see what I mean? Teach them to read and write. The next thing you know, they're forming a union and all hell breaks loose. That's what I'm saying.
I love how that minister distances himself from the comments that thinks it's very important to share. And those parish schools, those were the free ones. So that's not good. I'm sure nobody who is making funding decisions about schools today is in any way thinking that they might like to just keep the difficult people out from having the education to compete with them. I'm sure that's not happening.
No.
Not even in the slightest. Although didn't I read some Office of National Statistics thing about how 47% of people with a degree weren't actually doing a job that needed a degree recently? So maybe we don't need all those qualifications. Maybe the lords and ladies were right and that they should just be left to kind of not have the extra education if they're not using it, you know? Maybe that's a good idea.
Are you saying we'd be better off if we were more ignorant?
I think I am, but working for a university, I'm slightly reluctant to actually say that.
Well.
So education just makes people sadder. There you go.
A lot has actually changed since the 1840s. Women go to school as standard, and there's a lot more, obviously there's free schooling for all, and we've rocketed up in Scotland to 73.3% of us adults have an adequate level of literacy. Only 73%.
It's way better than we were, but hey.
So when we're thinking about education or libraries or poor relief, the right question to ask is, what do we want for the future and how do we actually make it happen?
I think this is Doc Hayton here, just cleverly fiddling with the DeLorean there, trying to speed us back up from the 1840s to 2015. That's about right. Yeah?
Yup.
Trying to speed us forward.
Okay. Well, I think we should pose our closing dangerous question for you, the people of the parish of the Yurt.
Yeah, I think we should probably do that. What do we actually want the future to be like? Because that seems pretty important. Because we've got all these social policies from the 1840s that seem to be kind of being adopted again. And so I figure we need to kind of think of something better to offer as a suggestion. So that's what we'd like to turn over to you. What would be better than this stuff that we seem to be repeating? What are our futures going to look like? And how do we prefer them to be done, you know?
So do we think we should shut the schools down? I mean, how many people did you say had a degree and never used it?
47%.
Hello, I'm that. Degree in politics and English, so naturally I became a stand-up comedian. So there we go.
Cool.
So maybe education, maybe we should start limiting education. Perhaps, in fact,
Maybe.
you only get to have an education if your parents are good citizens.
Okay, someone's going to have to argue with Susan, otherwise there's going to be chaos and she's going to be terribly smug.
You know, and let's think about it. The workhouse would be great for children who are in situations where they're being abused or neglected by alcohol or drug addicted parents. So workhouses aren't a bad idea. Should we bring them back? There's some hotels that are empty up in the Highlands. Let's just bung them up there.
It's a possibility. We want something completely and utterly different, though. Maybe the things that we're doing are not fit for purpose because they're not futuristic enough. Maybe we need, like, the hoverboard of social policy. I'm not sure what that would be. Suggestions welcome. If you tweet one thing from this show, tweet the hoverboard of social policy.
Does anybody else suddenly have an image of David Cameron at the next Tory party conference on the hoverboard of social policy? Like, watch this, I'm dead clever. Donald Trump probably have one. He'll have one. Yeah. I'm sure he would. So, have any ideas of what kind of policies that we could bring in that might be... I'm sorry I mentioned Donald Trump. He's just waving going... Oh.
What should we be doing to make our future better? It's a tricky question, I realise. You could fix something in education or something with the libraries. You want to fix the libraries, I know that. What would you do to make them better? Just close them. Just close them.
Oh, yeah. Combination of dance hall library.
So in Bhutan, they have this thing of like the happiness. They have many other issues there, but they have the idea that the happiness of the people is one thing you measure against. In theory, we do that here. But maybe singing and dancing would be a mandated sort of thing that you could pay in your tax money for, you know?
What, you mean compulsory singing and dancing? I'm not going to...
Maybe
totally.
free singing and dancing for all.
It's a bit Stalinist, isn't it? Anyway.
Well, there's been a lot of talk, especially in Scandinavian countries, about a citizen's wage. So I would propose bringing in a citizen's wage. So that would be regardless of what work you were doing or whether you were working or able to work or not.
Okay. Ooh. I
Yeah,
like
do you wa-
that.
oh, it's been seconded as well, so we
It's
can
been
go.
seconded.
We can have a show of who thinks that the idea of a Scandinavian style citizens' wage, where everybody gets. Listen, it's Scandinavian.
It's okay, we're in
That's so
we're in
sensible.
ideas land. This
We're
is
in
okay.
ideas land, it's all right.
Practicality is not one of our consideration in the yurt.
Right, well, who thinks that's a good idea? Let's just have a show of hands. A citizen's wage. Just that you never drop below a certain level. Getting it.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, we like that one. Go on the hoverboard. That's excellent. Sorry, did
Okay,
you?
that's on the hoverboard.
Hi. Can I just question your idea of closing libraries altogether? If we're restricting access to information, why don't we shut down the Daily Mail and the Daily Express and other sensational tabloids who talk a load of rubbish?
They do great coverage of Kim Kardashian. So.
We could ban Kim Kardashian. That could be a
Ban.
great move for the future.
Yeah, we could nationalise her. That's for sure.
I fear a show of hands on the closing the Daily Mail probably isn't worth doing because I can tell which way the room's going to go.
Who thinks we
to
should
be
close the
honest.
Daily Mail? Okay.
I've got a better idea. How about so investigative reporting, the kind of funding for that is very low because people who value that don't tend to pay for that. And crowdsource that is only kind of minimally successful at the moment. How about that's something that we somehow collectively support in the future, sort of proper investigative reporting?
Oh, we've got another one.
Excellent.
I think if you tax the celebrities, you'll be able to pay for the libraries.
Nice. Okay.
So
Strict
improve-
enforcement of their non-dom and such kind of taxation. Okay. I love it. So I don't know if you all heard that. Celebrity tax based on column inches. That's amazing.
I think that's a great
I love
idea.
That. I love that.
That's a brilliant idea. But also, how many tweets? I think so. Yeah, just tax every.
Okay, tweet rate. I'm not sure I support. As the prolific tweeter in the room, I think only as an index of tweet level versus column inches. You know.
Okay, yeah, I know, because I've just realised you have not had your mobile phone anywhere near you for about 50
No, I'm
minutes
quite twitchy about it, actually.
Any other policies that would take us into a brighter future on our hoverboard?
Indeed.
Microphone though. So, whole thing going on. Oh, we got another one. Oh, you just have to be with the mic. It should work. Just there with.
Parliament partially made up of real people.
Ooh, I like that. There are some very small countries that do that.
There
Yeah,
are. There
that
are.
rotate in. You kind of get it's your turn.
Yeah,
kind of
don't
letter through the
let
post.
professional politicians run it.
Okay, I think that's a lovely idea. Do we like that? Do we think we can get that past the politicians who allow us the structures to vote on things to get these kind of things in? Okay. Citizen overpowers politicians, takes over parliament. I like that. Okay.
Yeah, let's give it a go.
Excellent. We will start revolution in the yurt.
Have so 50% of all new housing has to be social housing, and all social housing has to have renewable energy sources built in. So people who live in social housing have energy bills, so more disposable income, less kind of financial stress.
To pay for their access to the libraries.
Yes, that we're
Awesome.
fighting to keep open there.
That's a lovely idea.
Yeah.
This is your associate idea land, because strictly for the U.S., I would love your election system where it's only 6 weeks. Please, God.
Oh, are you American? Oh, we feel your pain. I mean, you can never turn the television on without that Trump person appearing, and I hear that his hair is now making a run for the White House, completely solo. It's frightening. Totally.
Okay, so 6-week elections for the US. That's okay. I think they're still quite bitter at the time of these accounts, but maybe in the future, we can pass stuff on to them. That's grand.
Yes.
Maybe no tombstones during any election as well, just for good measure.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm liking this. We have like a nice society kind of building up here.
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling about the kind of schools and university issue? We got too many people going into university.
I think they should bring back the student grant. Yep.
I like that idea. Do you
Yep.
think?
Uh-huh.
I think they should bring back more technical colleges.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Who
Okay.
thinks the student grant should be brought back? It's pretty... Okay, we win.
Okay, I'm going to put on my Osborne of Another Nature hat and ask how that's going to get paid for.
By taxing Kardashians. Thought we'd agreed about that one earlier, hadn't we?
Because I reckon quite a lot of these are excellent ideas that might require us to pay for it. So would you vote for more tax? Parish of the Yurt.
Yep.
Okay, there's a corner that definitely would over here. This
Only
is
if it
good.
wasn't being spent on libraries.
Okay. Fair enough. Excellent. I'm going to find out afterwards which library is your library, because they clearly need some sort of help to make themselves valued in your community.
Okay,
it's a reasonable issue.
I think we've done it, and we've come up with enough good ideas to get us forward back into 2015.
Yeah, excellent. We've powered the DeLorean with our very low-tech prop again. You have been the most lovely set of policy innovators, I have to say. I am very much hoping that we will have more chat on the historical stats and future stats and plans in the bar afterwards. Do join us. And you can also get Helen's rundown of the sauciest of folk tales from the Statistical accounts. I can tell you now that one of them is obscene, properly obscene. Couldn't see on the telly, so obscene. So do check in with us in the bar.
It involves an adulterous blacksmith.
Oh, the adulterous... Oh, it's a cracker.
It's a cracker, it's a cracker.
When my grandfather was growing up in Glasgow, there was a shop that sold tripe. And so it was tiled, right? And then after it stopped selling tripe of an evening, they would, I assume, clear the tripe away. And it became a tango venue. It is... It is, as far as I know, the world's only tripe and tango shop. So that's the good people of Glasgow taking on board the lessons of the musical library there in the background. So that was years ago. So yeah, it was tripe and tango. Brilliant, by the way.
That's fantastic.
I don't think you had to waltz tango round the tripe. And anyway, I'm not sure how you would do that. This has been fun. Well, I wish all of you would run for Parliament, because I think you've all been absolutely brilliant,
awesome.
Innovators, absolutely awesome. Please give yourself a huge round of applause for all your... Now then, get her to tell you about the blacksmith. It's absolutely cracking. Right, thank you very much for joining us down here at the Cabinet of Dangerous Ideas. We're here every day at 3 o'clock, different presenters, different topic. You've been absolutely fantastic. I will now release you to the bar. Jump, Helen, get the story. Thank you once again. Big round of applause for Helen and for Nicola. Thank you. Hang on, we do have a statistical analysis. My microphone's completely died now. We have our own statistical analysis. Thank you very much, Nicola, because she is a statistician. So it's just a little bit of research. So first of all, I've got to ask you all these questions. Just raise your hands and answer. Don't worry, it's not 167 questions. How many attendees work at a university? Put your hands up. We'll accept cleaner. How many, or people who've seen a university, how many attendees are friends or colleagues of the presenters? Hello. I love the way you've all... Hello, we're over here. Any trouble? We'll sort it out. How many people are from out of town? Hello, American cousins. We'll go over there and sort out that election situation. Don't you worry. How many people have learned something new as a result of this show? Well, that's pretty... And how many people have changed their minds as a result of this show? The libraries are doomed. Who do you want to win, by the way, in the American presidential elections? You look nice. I'm going to say Clinton. So anyway, thank you once again for joining us, and I release you back into the outside world. Goodbye, Parish. Thank you.